Okay, guys. Yeah, let's get started. So, first up, this is our agenda for today. Only thing really to take note is we will be taking a networking break in the middle. Take advantage of that. Meet the people that are around you. I was just telling a networking story to a lovely couple over at the corner. There's a lot of knowledge in this room. A lot of people who've done a lot of investing, and they're willing to share. One of the things I love about our community here is everybody's pretty cool about it. So meet your neighbors, ask some questions, get to know them. A couple of housekeeping items. So first thing is please help support a local business. They are very nice to graciously host us here. The food is good, the drinks are good too. So please order, and then make sure you don't dine and dash.
Don't dine and dash. I have to pay for it. Stop dining and dashing.
Every month,
I will find you.
Somebody forgets to pay their bill. So yes, please support local. If you need washrooms, they're downstairs. Cell phones, if you could please keep on silent. Not that it matters right now, because downstairs is super loud tonight. And then recording. So don't worry about you can still pull out your phone and take pictures of slides that you find interesting and whatnot, but you don't need to. If you're on a mailing list, you'll get notified when the slides are available online. You just look at them there online. And if you need to get on our mailing list for those slides, then you have to pull out your phone and capture the QR code there. Okay, next we have my favorite slide, our legal disclaimer. You can grab a seat if you want. You good? Okay. So basically, it's up there. You can take a read through it. In general, what it says is Teresa is smiling. She thinks this is funny. But basically, if you're unsatisfied with what you're hearing tonight, your course of action, if you're unsatisfied, is to leave. Hopefully you don't have to leave because you're unsatisfied with what you're hearing. But if you are, there's the door. Okay, so let's talk about who we are. Who's here new tonight? Who's never?
First time?
Okay, so it's about half the folks. Okay, great. So let me explain a little bit of who we are. First, we're not very stuffy or formal. This is a relatively small group. We like to be interactive, so we'll be chatting with the audience as we go through the presentation. But first and foremost, who the heck are we? Who's Volition? So we're the hosts of tonight. We are at the core real estate brokerage who specializes in investment programs. So we have a lot of places have mission statements, and we have a mission statement up there. But really, it's the image on the left you see. When we were starting our real estate investment journey ourselves, we wish we existed because we didn't have anybody to ask questions about, to a community to help guide us through the process, and that's what we've created. So first and foremost, we're here to help through the complexity of real estate and real estate investing. Next thing is we help through providing solutions. So I'll talk a bit of it more about this later, but basically we try to help through the entire process, from the beginning to the end. And if we don't do it ourselves, we have partners that do it for us. Next thing is we figure it out for you. So a big thing that we do is, it's one thing to talk about the data, it's another, which we're very data heavy, you'll see in our presentations. But it's another thing to take the data and actually generate solutions out of it. That's the step we try to take. We try to synthesize solutions based on the data that we're seeing. And the last one is we come from experience. We're all investors. Everybody at the company is a real estate investor. This will be my 22nd year, investing. So I've been doing this for a long time, and so is Matt. We just look younger because we're Asian. But I'm getting all the gray hair now. Okay, so this is basically how do we help people. So there are 4 parts of the company. The first one is mentorship, education, consultation, aka advisory. That's kind of what you guys are experiencing right now. We want to teach. Education is a big part of who we are. We believe that the more educated our clients are, our investors are, actually the better of a job we can do for them. Nothing breaks my heart more than actually we go to a great investment property and my client can't see what I can see. it's a missed opportunity. So education is a big part of it for us, and we also offer individual advisory. So we pimp out Matt's time, and he's very excited about that. But Matt will work with you or your family to figure out an individual investment plan based on what your starting point is and where you're trying to get to, and how real estate plays a role in that. Next is realty. Realty is the part that I run. So we've got a team of realtors, and we take the plan that Matt has put together, and we drive it to execution. So what you may have put together with Matt is like, hey, you know what? I've got a business. It's generating X amount of dollars. I want to retain a certain amount of earnings within my business, but I want to create an investco. From that investco, I'm going to put X amount of dollars into it to buy some properties. I'm willing to do renovations. But I've got a 12-month timeline to do that. We take that and put that plan into action. So we're looking for the right properties, we're looking for the right tenant profiles to meet whatever the plan is. Next is renovations. We're not contractors ourselves, but we work very closely with contractors to make these things a reality. And oftentimes, we'll be saying things like, a fourplex might be the best solution for you. Or your existing property really should be maximizing that first with a laneway suite. So in real estate and construction go hand in hand, and we have that service there really to solve that problem. And then last thing, and probably the thing I'm most proud of, is community. That's everybody here tonight. That's the familiar faces I've been seeing all these years. Everybody helping each other out. That's basically what the community is. And we have in a circle a giant WhatsApp message group, which is like the safe space, which we all get to complain to each other and get help and advice. And this is the team that makes it happen. So me and Matt are up there, and I think everybody else is here, except for a couple of our assistants. These are our core values. I've been wanting to just show them to everybody. I won't walk everybody through them, but these are our guiding principles of the company. So all decisions that we make is based on these things. You can see right there, right in the center is do the right thing. We believe very highly in integrity, and I don't know what it is about this industry. Maybe it doesn't drive most of everybody sometimes. I do believe this is something that differentiates us, so we have it there, and education is what we're doing tonight. So what has that meant for us? We won a ton of awards. We've been in the media, we're on podcasts, we have HGTV articles. So it's paid off, and I think our clients have been pretty happy. We've invested a ton of money for them, and also made a bunch of money over the years. So, yeah, it's been good. Oh, and just a reminder about our WhatsApp chat. If you're a client in the room, Boaz, I don't think you're on there. So, this is why this exists. Because we need to make sure we're adding our active clients onto that chat group. If we're so inclined to be.
Right there. Does that count as being in the room?
I don't know if he wants to be on the chat. But anyway, we've got, if we missed you, please make sure to contact us so we can add you into the group. Okay, rental market update, over to Florence. So Florence runs construction, operations, and is kind of
and our lives.
And our lives. Yeah.
And everyone's here. Is it nice and clear? Yeah.
I feel I should do the testing, 1, 2, 3. Seems okay. So Matt just showed me how to use this cool clicker. I'm going to present the part of the danger with putting slides together is I often have to present some of it, and I've gotten away with just one for today. People love numbers, so we try to do this rental update every couple months just to show people what the trends are in the market. So what we've seen over the last 6 to 8 months, a lot of rental prices have shot up, $200-$300 per month per unit. And these are 4 examples of properties that our clients have leased in East York, and they did it actually by themselves without external support. So there's 3 takeaways from the slide here. We'll try using this spotlight. Okay, I know it's actually super distracting to point at it. But the first takeaway is a very small 1-bedroom apartment under 500 square feet is actually approaching $2,000 a month in Easter. It's pretty mind-blowing. I've been through all 4 of these units, and I am always shocked at it's a great shock, but I was like, oh man, almost $2,000 to live in 450 square foot in a basement. So takeaway number 1, small units, still getting really good rents, approaching a couple grand a month. Second takeaway is actually for the 1 bedroom that's there, the 1 bed, 1 bath basement in the triplex. And the takeaway there is that they're starting to get north of $2,000 as well. So pretty strong showing. This one actually does do renovations in the last couple of years. And you can tell just even by the first picture there. The third takeaway is for the 2 bed, 1 bath units that we've seen in these areas as well. Approaching again high 2000s. Once you throw in utilities, you're approaching $3,000 a month. So very strong rental performance. So it's a tough market, yes, for landlords sometimes. It's also a very competitive rental market as well. So, those are just a few data points we wanted to share today. If you have any specific questions about the rental market, feel free to talk to any one of us at the break. We'll turn it over to Wilson to talk about our monthly property tour.
Hey everybody, who here is a first-time Volition meetup participant? Real lot. Okay, I have a special offer for you. We have our monthly property tour, and what that is we actually show you what we look for as real estate investors in Toronto. Can you guys hear me? Perfect. Okay. So the monthly house tour is an educational tool to show you what we look for in properties. Whether it's converting it to a triplex, if we're looking for a laid waste street potential, how much there's a setback, if there's a basement walkout in the front versus the back versus the side, what the benefits are. This is purely an educational tool. So for anyone that is a first timer or wants to learn, definitely sign up for the monthly house tour. We only have them once a month, and it is hosted by yours truly. It's limited to 3 to 4 groups. It's a more intimate setting, so there's a lot of questions back and forth, a lot of education. So there's only 3 to 4 max. I'll put it up to 6 groups. So this week we could potentially have it for Friday, but you have to come see me and RSVP first. But I'll be having them. That's it.
Please give a round of applause for Hugo.
Thanks, guys. This is the biggest group I've ever been to at Volition. This is awesome. So congrats, guys. And can we give you guys a big round of applause? Because you guys do such an awesome job. As a mortgage broker, they literally make my life so much easier by by bringing the stuff that actually makes sense most of the time. So let's kind of get into it here. You guys hear me okay? I mean, I'm okay with this. It's okay? Put it up? Yeah, I talk a little loud, so. So this is the agenda. If you guys want to interrupt, this is very casual. I don't want to make a formal presentation. If you have any questions, just put your hand up. I'm more than happy to stop and answer it as we go through it. We can also take some questions at the end as well. So let's kind of get into it. So how do you guys feel when you saw this headline last week? Anyone who's got a variable rate mortgage, anyone who's got a HELOC or line of credit? How did you? Yeah, that's how we felt too. I gotta stand up here. This was probably the first time in a long time where we felt like, hey, you know what? We may be at the end of the rate increase cycle that we've been experiencing based on the data and based on the comments the Bank of Canada put out there. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with a lot of the Bank of Canada data and the notes, but the Bank of Canada is very cryptic. And a lot of people will really go over the notes in the Bank of Canada documents to identify any hints or words in there that might indicate exactly where the Bank of Canada is looking to take their policy. And the most recent one was actually a little bit lighter than what I think a lot of economists predicted it would look like. And it was probably the first little light at the end of the tunnel in the last year and a half that I think has revised some of the recommendations we've been making to clients, which I'll get into later on. And I think has put a little bit of positive spin or hope for anyone who's got a variable rate mortgage. We see those rates go up almost 5%. So, I like to think that's true. The data seems to show that, and we'll continue to see what it looks like the next few months. But definitely was a good headline and some interesting notes there. So I want to kind of get into, without being too technical, I think it's important to explain what impacts the rates for the most part, and what data, in case you're curious and you want to be following yourself, what data you should be following up with to understand where your mortgage rates, especially if they're variable, may end up. So the three important items are generally the GDP growth, which we'll get into, unemployment, and inflation, CPI. So we'll get into a little bit of each of those guys. So took this back to January, and to give you a little bit of a trend line as to how the economy has grown. So what this is looking at is how much the Canadian economy has grown since January last year. And you can see there's a significant drop-off, going into the end of 2022. And I don't know if anybody remembers the beginning of this year. I know these guys at Volition, or anyone who was buying a home in January remembers, the Bank of Canada announced in January that they were likely going to pause rates. And there was a whole bunch of excitement at the beginning of this year, and I think everybody thought, like, the party's back on, rates are coming down, let's get back into it. So we see a bunch of activity. A lot of that was associated with real estate out there from January probably until April. And then what happened is the government, the Bank of Canada miscalculated. They realized that the economy was a lot more robust than they expected, and we saw communication that we're going to increase the rates. There's going to be a lot more pain and so on. And we saw the real estate market actually slow down quite a bit. And even in my world, where generally we see the most activity from the spring throughout the summer, it was relatively quiet. I think the conversation we had with most clients were, I waited to see what happens, and everyone else was, anyone who was working with a solid realtor team was able to spot excellent opportunities, but there was a lot less of it, for sure. There's a lot less business. So, year to date, the economy is actually contracted. It hasn't grown by 0.2%, which is well below the expectations of 1.2% that most analysts have predicted. So one thing when looking at rates is the economy growing or not? If the economy is slowing down, at least for the purposes of interest rates, that's probably a good thing, meaning that rates generally come down. Because the idea is, as rates get higher, the intention is to slow the economy down. When the economy is too slow, rates will come down to stimulate the economy. So kind of a supply and demand, right? So the next item is unemployment. So unemployment does have an impact on rates for various reasons. One of the big reasons is, as an employer ourselves, as a brokerage, if unemployment is low, which means there's less people looking for jobs, that means that employers generally have to pay higher salaries to attract talent to their companies. And if I have to pay someone more money to bring them on, and I have a hard time finding someone, that means that they now have more money to spend in the market, and then the cycle continues where inflation and other things remain quite high. So in the context of bringing rates down, unemployment going up is actually a good thing. And so looking at this chart, you'll see that we have had, finally as of April forward, we have seen unemployment continue to rise after several months of basically flat. And that was part of the reason why we saw rates go up at the beginning of the year, is because the Bank of Canada noticed that unemployment was remaining stagnant. They were worried that it was going to continue to remain stagnant. So once we finally started to see some data show that unemployment started to creep up, it was a pretty good sign that, hey, we should probably hit hold on those rates. Now, a lot of this data, for almost all these data points, is generally every single month you get these data updates. So this graph might look very different by the end of this month. The good news is the U.S. unemployment released their data, and their unemployment's actually been trending upwards as well, which is usually very similar in Canada. So again, unemployment creeping up a little bit, definitely a good sign for our purposes. The big one is inflation, CPI. There's a lot of different definitions, and economists have different types of CPI that they monitor. This one here is just the overall kind of aggregate CPI. Basically, inflation is going to track a basket of goods, services, gas, food, housing, these sort of things. They take the average to determine how much of a change has happened either in the last month or in the last year or so. This is really, really important because it predicts the cost of goods. And more importantly, the Bank of Canada's target is to try and keep inflation between 2 and 3%. Once they've achieved that 2 to 3% sort of range, that's when we'll have a lot more confidence around the possibility of seeing rates actually get decreased. So we're tracking this. So if you're looking at the graph, does anybody remember when inflation was like 7%? That wasn't even that long ago. What is it? October maybe of last year. Do you guys remember 7% inflation? Maybe just me. But look how much that's dropped off since then. We're currently sitting at 3.3% inflation. So there's been a significant drop off of the cost of goods, especially as anyone who had surplus savings coming out of COVID has started to run out. As the cost of rents, as we saw there on the other slide, as the cost of mortgage rates have gone up, a lot of people have less funds. So, activity has slowed down quite a bit. Businesses are also laying off a significant amount of people. So RBC very recently laid off about 2% of their workforce, and I can only imagine a lot of the other banks and other major employers will do the same. So, things are slowing down for sure. Now, there is a little bit of an uptick. So anyone who's spotted that and say, well, the inflation actually went up, so that doesn't make sense. There was a little bit of an uptick, but the economists don't seem to be too concerned with that in the last month because a lot of it is attributed to some fluctuations in gas. So just because we see some little upticks, it doesn't automatically mean, we're kind of going the wrong way. You have to kind of peel back the curtain and understand why. There was some significant impacts to gas 12 months before, which was there was an uptick. The Bank of Canada doesn't seem to be too concerned, and seems to feel that this should continue to trend downward. We'll see later this month when the next set of data comes out if it in fact is going down, but it's a pretty important monitor for where rates will end up. So I thought this was an interesting graph, not really related to real estate, but I thought it was kind of cool. So I think this was from OpenTable, which many of you guys might use. So the amount of Canadians going out for dining has significantly dropped off quite a bit, depending on which city you're in. So I think it's as high as, north of 10% down to, almost a negative if you're living in Edmonton. So I guess no one's going out for dinner there. So very interesting sort of trend that, it's not just this data, but, as humans, if we've got less money available to us, we're going to go take away things like going out for dinner because we don't necessarily need to do those things. So it's kind of an interesting graph that Canadians are slowing down and spending less of their surplus money. So before I get into this next one, I'm just going to take a pause here. On those 3 data points, on those things that we're monitoring, any questions? Anyone want to ask anything? Is that?
How can it be negative if you cook for the restaurant?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this is OpenTable's graph, so I shouldn't comment too much, but it looks like maybe in Edmonton, I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know. This is like straight from the website. That's a good point. Yeah, I guess it's year over year. Maybe there's just a drop off of negative 5%, I think is what it says there. In Edmonton, Toronto seems to be almost just under 0 as well. I just wanted to show you the trend. I probably can't explain why this graph makes sense. I just thought it was an interesting graph given that we're in a restaurant today. So, over here. Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's been that argument over and over and over. So the question was, a big component of CPI, a big component of inflation is housing costs or interest rates. And the argument was, well, if you just stop increasing rates and you decrease them, things will get cheaper for us, which is a solid argument, makes sense to me. And I think the BC governor very recently, or the premier, wrote to the governor, to the Bank of Canada and said, hey, listen, you should stop increasing rates because it's having a huge impact on all our investors over here. That's a really good point. The Bank of Canada takes the position that, we're not only looking at real estate expenses in formulating whether we need to increase rates or decrease them. We're looking at the overall Canadian and, the non-real estate market, the non-real estate segment as well. So, they seem to be keen that the real estate market shouldn't dictate their decision to increase rates. I think secretly behind the scenes, there's a lot of pressure on them to monitor the real estate market and the impact of the real estate market because, Canada, unlike a lot of other countries around the world, a lot of our economy relies on real estate. Not only on the development of housing, on the real estate services world, the insurers, the construction. Unfortunately, a lot of our economy does revolve around real estate. And as much as the BOC or the Bank of Canada won't admit it, they are definitely influenced by it. But I think they've probably taken a political stance and said, we're also looking at everything else for those that don't have real estate. So, yeah, that's probably not the answer you wanted, but that's the answer that they give everyone else. So, it's a good point. Good question, though. Anyone else? All right. So, anybody have a HELOC and they received a letter recently saying that there's going to be changes to your HELOC, and you didn't really understand what it was talking about. A lot of it from Scotiabank, but other lenders as well. Yeah? Okay, I'll try to explain it. Because this is actually a very common solution for investors, is using your HELOC for investing, and then refinancing, creating a new HELOC, and buying another property and sold, right? So there are some significant changes to HELOC limits coming out. It depends on the bank, but it's going to be either November 1st. Sorry, I think I skipped a slide. Either November 1st or January 1st, depending on your bank. For the most part, November 1st. So for anyone who currently has a HELOC, the way it works is generally you're only allowed to borrow up to 65% of the value of your property in the form of a readvance of a mortgage or HELOC. You can borrow up to 80% in the form of a mortgage. You just can't have more than 65 as a HELOC. That's the rule that currently exists. What this new rule says, so as an example, you could have $1 million home, $800,000 mortgage, or $1 million home with a $600,000 line of credit and a $200,000 mortgage. So any combination up to 80%, no problem. With this new rule, we're going to see readvanceable mortgages, meaning as you pay down your mortgage, you unlock some equity, capped at 65%. So if you take a mortgage for 800 grand and you pay down some of that, you can access that equity, at least in the form of a line of credit, until it's been reduced to 650,000. So a pretty big deal. Because I don't know if any of you guys have heard of the Smith maneuver, and I won't get into that today, or if you use the Smith maneuver, but generally the concept of the Smith maneuver is as you pay down your mortgage, you re-borrow that money and you invest it. So you can't really do that, at least in the exact same way it exists, because of this rule change. So I think there's an example here for anyone who's confused, because we're definitely confused. Because we met a team of about 70 agents, and almost every lender, I think every lender's made this change. And even the lenders have a hard time explaining it to us. So I was trying to extract as much examples that hopefully illustrate the impact. So let's assume in this example, this is obviously not shown by the way, that there's an appraisal value of 600,000, and the bank that has lent some money on this, sorry, I'll fix this table. So the value of this home is 600,000. The bank has provided an approval of 480, which is 80%, no problem. Now, the rule here is, with most lenders, so let me just skip down a little bit, because I'm looking at it now and I think I might have added a little bit too much info there. So the bank has provided an approval for $480,000. With the new rule, this particular individual cannot access equity until their balance drops to 390, which is 65%. So now, before everyone starts freaking out and saying, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to access this equity to buy real estate, most banks are actually doing this over a 25-year time frame, which means that over 25 years, your 80% loan to value approval limit will slowly decrease until it hits 65%. So the actual impact per month is about $300. So every month you have $300 less potential to access credit. At the end of the year, in this example, it's about $3,600. So it's probably not as much of a massive impact as I think a lot of people expect it to be. But the reality is, at least in Southern Ontario and Toronto, if you were to wait 3 to 5 years, it's very likely your home has increased in value, which allows you to reset, even if it's only 65%. So I just wanted to without getting into too much detail, because I've had tons of these questions, just kind of showcase that there is still the ability to use your line of credit for buying real estate. You just have to keep in mind that access to it in the future will slowly decrease. So setting up a mortgage might be a little bit more attractive. So the question was, at the end of the term, if you change lenders. So again, because this hasn't officially started, what we've been told is if you were to change lenders, so take your mortgage to a new lender, you will automatically be set at 65% loan to value in terms of a line of credit. You can still, so what I would probably do is just take 80% of it as a mortgage to maximize your access to the credit. You just can't have a readvanceable component above 65%. So you could change lenders, and whether you're with a Scotia or with TD or you switch lenders, it's not going to re-trigger or immediately bring it down. That's going to happen regardless of which lender you're with, whatever lender you're with. So there's no shortcut to try and grandfather it. I think the only grandfathered option is if you did this before 2012. Any HELOCs set up before 2012 don't have to follow this rule. But the reality is that's over 10 years ago. The house is probably doubled in value, so it's irrelevant. So What we have been recommending is, again, this only starts as of November 1st. So if you have access to credit currently available to you, it might be worthwhile expediting and refinancing before the deadline to unlock that. Because if you don't do that, it's going to automatically drop that limit to 65%. So if you're trying to get access to a line of credit and you currently don't have one, why not try to get the highest limit possible now? Because even though it will slowly decrease, at least it's decreasing at the top versus automatically starting at 65%. So again, for anyone who's looking at buying something in the next 3 to 4 months, probably worthwhile having a conversation around going through that process and the impacts of this to you, especially for a lot of the clients that we speak with, and maybe the ones here, are going to use the HELOC for the purpose of buying real estate. So it might make sense to get that out of the way. I don't know if you have your hand up. I think you do. Say it again. Sorry. So the question is, once it's in place, it's not that you don't lose it, it's just that by you resetting it to the maximum before this rule kicks in, it starts to decrease slowly, but at least you're resetting it to the highest you can access now. If you don't do that, it's going to decrease at the lower level that you're probably already at. So that's all.
Or the same question. We both us. It's only after it's not mine.
The refinancing? Aside from this, just in general, for refinancing, there isn't any sort of additional stress test. There isn't any harder rules or policies, aside from the rate being higher, I guess. Funny enough, though, is even though the rates have gone up almost 5%, the banks have actually expanded a little bit how much they'll let you borrow. So without getting too technical, when you're borrowing a mortgage, the banks are looking at your affordability, which is usually in the form of a GDS or TDS. So how much debt versus income is your TDS or your GDS ratio. Traditionally, the banks will cut you off around 39-40%. We have some aid lenders that have now stretched that as high as 50%. So funny enough is I think they've probably loosened things up a little bit because they're qualifying everyone at 5% more than they were 2 years ago. So I wouldn't say that refinancing has gone harder. Where we had a challenge in the beginning of the year was with appraisals. People were buying homes where, because the market, I guess more last year, the market was slowing down and in some cases decreasing. People were buying homes where the appraisal was now under. So that's where we saw some issues. But I think the market's flattened out a little bit, and we have seen a trend upwards. So I wouldn't say that refinancing has gotten harder at all. No, I wouldn't say that. Aside from the fact that it's harder to qualify, the banks haven't made it harder. So, is that your question? No? Okay.
Okay. I was hoping people would do the heavy lifting and just.
I want to forget. Sounds like a long one.
Why I'm asking, it's because a lot of our investors are actually, with Flying Group, they use the social step program, right? So we use that as an example. So let's say a lot of folks are 80% loan to value right now. Let's say there's one mortgage and one HELOC. The HELOC is $200,000, and as of November, if it's not taken out, even if it is fully drawn, does that limit?
Oh, yeah, that's your question.
Down? Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, like what happens to it, or should we go take all that 200 grand out before?
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to repeat the question in a different way. So if you have a line of credit for whatever, $500,000, and its rule starts, and your line of credit limit, and so I should differentiate. There's a difference between your approval limit and your actual available limit. So if your available limit is $500,000, the bank is not going to take away your $500,000 if you're already using it. What they're going to do is slowly decrease your overall limit. So if you were to dip below, let's say, you need to take your $500,000 down to $400,000, but you've already maxed it out. As long as you maxed it out, you'll continue to make payments and you don't have to do anything. But if you dip below maybe the $400,000, then they won't let you re-borrow above that. So I guess the idea would be, either take it all out, I guess. But again, like if you saw the example there, the impact is pretty marginal. Like over a whole year, the impact of this particular example, which is a $480,000 limit, is $3,600. So, again, it's reduced over 25 years. So is it worth borrowing $500,000 to make sure you have $3,600 more at the end of the year? Probably not. So again, I don't want it to be something that we should all rush out and start maxing our HELOCs. be mindful. But check with your lender. This is specifically for like maybe 2 or 3 lenders. Not everybody has communicated how they're going to do this. Some banks might have a different approach, so I can't speak on every single bank, but I haven't seen all the policies yet. Yeah, so again, what you should do if you're going to buy real estate anyways, you might as well put this option in place so you can reset your limit. So what's a good limit? So you guys involved with that? I kind of found out on Google. Is that your project at all? No? I saw it. I thought it was cool. So I don't really have much to say because I don't think there is much to say about laneway suites. The banks will refinance them now, which is great. Not every bank. I guess I've known for a while, so I didn't think it was that steady, but yes, the banks will refinance laneway suites on exception. I mean, I would always say before you initiate a $500,000 project, plus or minus, maybe have a chat to figure out what your exit strategy will look like. But the banks in the last 2 years, when the city has loosened up development around laneway houses, a handful, I would say most of the big banks are completely open to it. Now, it's very reliant on the appraisal. So if you've got a $1.5 million property, you put a $500,000 laneway suite, and your assumption is the house should be worth $2 million. That appraiser, if there isn't enough laneway house comparables, may not attribute the same value that you think it is. So it's very important, in my opinion, before you spend all this money on a laneway house, get an appraisal that will determine your value today and the value once the appraisal is done, and then use that as almost like a pre-approval with the lender to make sure that you have an actual plan, because you don't want to go out and spend all this money, you have no way of recouping it, right? So that's kind of my only thought. But the banks will treat it like a regular refinance. We're able to use the rental income, qualify you based on all that, and make sure the math works. Regular rates. Even some of the B lenders will be open to it. So yeah, the big news is that they've recently sort of loosened up those rules quite a bit. So that's kind of good. But keep in mind, the values. This might not be exactly what you wanted to get, but that's really all I had to say. Yeah.
Well, I made Hugo put this mention in because he didn't think it was important, but it's important to a lot of investors who like these $500,000 projects and with really good cash flow. So the question, I know it's generalities, but do you find that the appraisal comes back at least around construction cost?
That's a good question. So I just want to say, it's not that I don't think it's important, I just don't have much to say because we treat it like a regular file now. But it is really important. I love laneway houses and the process of debating whether should I do one for my property as well. So, sorry, your question was the appraisal value. What's interesting is appraisals are not like an exact science. I mean, there's a little bit of a model that the appraiser has to follow to determine certain things like, well, if these 3 houses in the same neighborhood have similar conditions sold for X, this house that I'm appraising is going to be within a very tight range. Like, it's just obvious stuff. In a situation where maybe it's a laneway house and it's the only one, or the pioneer of the street, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. And for an appraiser, even they haven't seen too many laneway houses. Because I think in Toronto, I don't know if you guys know the number, there's only like, what, a couple dozen that have been legitimately approved? I mean, in my neighborhood, it's a bunch of Portuguese guys cranking out fake laneway houses, but like, legitimately, there's not that many. So the appraisers haven't had an opportunity to probably conduct enough research. Where we find the most value is when and this is rare, but where the agent and sometimes the realtor, the client of the realtor put together like almost like a package, like here's what I did to it, here are my realtor's comparables. I find it, and I'm not diminishing appraisers, we love appraisers, I'm just gonna throw it out there though. Sometimes it makes them, they're lazy, some of them, and they're gonna be like, all right, cool, I have this 20-page PDF explaining exactly what was done, basically like arguing for a specific value. And very often, I would say almost 90% of the time, it comes in very close to that proposal that was provided. So if you're going to spend several $100,000, work with the team at Volition to conduct your own research and put together some solid comparables, a breakdown of your costs and these sort of things, because you're likely going to have a lot higher success. Because again, it's not an exact science. These guys aren't coming out and saying, we've had appraisals that are like, these random numbers, like, your home is worth 1.5823. You're like, really? Can't just round it up. So, again, it's not an exact science. So doing a little more due diligence, presenting to the appraiser, I find is going to have the best outcome. And the clients that come very prepared with that, generally are not going to have a huge surprise. Whereas if you just leave it up to an appraiser who knows nothing about investment properties, because again, sometimes we're not able to control that. I mean, if we have a lender that allows us the opportunity to choose the appraiser, we'll be completely involved and controlling of that process. But sometimes the banks that give us zero autonomy, it just goes to whoever's on that Rolodex They go out, might know nothing about laneway houses, and they're going to do whatever they think is reasonable. Actually, just this week, I won't say the name, but we had a client in my neighborhood, funny enough, who did an appraisal last year, the end of the year. So I would say the market was already probably flat by then. I think I don't think it was decreasing for like 1.8 million. He legitimately put $500,000 of rent on us since then, and the new appraiser this week is like it's worth 1.7 now. It's like it's no way. There's no way that he built 500,000 of gold. Like so again, the appraisers are not always accurate. So put a little more research, and I think that's going to help. But yeah, it's definitely a massive win for us on the investment side.
Yeah. So, as Hugo mentioned, putting together a appraisal package is something we do with all our clients. And it's not just a matter of like, here's some comps, because especially on laneway properties, there's not many, right? There's a pool of properties that have been built, laneway houses. There is a smaller pool of properties that have had appraisals through them. There's an even smaller pool that have actually sold in the open market. I think there's like 10, right? Less that have actually sold. So if they're pulling sold comps, it's kind of useless. So the way that we put these packages together is we look at construction costs, so we do cost plus modeling for them, put together all those receipts, everything that comes from contractors. We do our professional appraisals based per square footage cost, per square footage value. And then we can also do a cap rate calculation, right, based on what we see renting. There's a little bit of information on that as well. So we come at it in multiple ways to show the appraiser that we know what we're talking about.
It definitely helps. So
Hugo.
yes.
So let's say you spend $500,000 building a laneway suite. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square feet, 1,400 square feet. You're renting for $4,500, $5,000. How much does that rental income solely boost your mortgage qualification?
Well, it would be like having like an extra unit in your home that rents for $3,000 or whatever that number is. It's significant. Keep in mind that with a laneway house, generally you can command a much higher rent than you would with just a basic suites. So it'll have a huge impact on your ability to buy that.
So what does that work out to? If you assume like $5,000 of rent, just off the top of your
So
head.
$5,000 of rent for $500,000.
Forget the construction costs.
So $5,000 of rent. Let's assume that you qualify for just to kind of create a baseline. Let's assume you qualify for $1 million, and I add $5,000 of net new rent. Oh man, there's so many variables that could happen, but I would say probably at least $250,000 plus or minus. I'd have to verify that, but it's significant.
Yeah, so
It's huge.
For people who are already at their backs on their TDS ratios, for example, building a laneway suite, getting that additional rental income can actually boost your mortgage qualification on the equity takeout for that same property.
100%. Yeah, it's definitely the way to go, for sure. I know cash flow is obviously a huge concern when rates are so high. I feel like every other phone call is how do I get my payments down? So finding ways like this for laneway house not only adds massive value to your asset, but also helps stabilize the cash flow in your portfolio. So, really good. I think you said garden suites. Good question. So those are a little bit different. So in the city of Toronto, I find that the banks are a little bit more keen on these refinances up to 80%. The garden suites are hit and miss. It depends. It's almost like 2 years ago where we were trying to refinance laneway houses. Everything is based on the appraisal, the location. So I don't want to say with a blanket statement that garden suites are going to have the same outcome as a laneway house. We've had a lot more success to the point where like the lenders will put this in their policy. 2 years ago they wouldn't, and it was almost like send it to us, maybe we'll do it. We have to see the appraisal. So it's kind of the same thing with a garden suite. At least in our experience now, that could easily change in the next 12 months.
Yeah, for garden suites, it's just too new, right? Like, too new, right? If we're talking about laneway suites, which were ratified in 2018, I think it was, the policy. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't speak for outside the city on garden suites. Within the city, when it comes to garden suites, though, there isn't enough product out there yet that's even completed yet for them to be able to do it sort of refinance.
Now, you have to kind of appreciate the position of the lenders. They're looking at this thing, we're going to give you some money on this garden suite, but if this is the only garden suite in this whole neighborhood, how do we know that it has the same value that you put into it? Like, what if you don't make a mortgage payment and we need to foreclose on your home? Can we recoup our money? Can we get our mortgage out? With a layaway house, because it's a little bit more established now, there's some precedent, the city's acknowledged it, the lenders are, at least in Toronto, have been okay with treating it like a normal refinance. Yeah, the garden suites, we had applications where the appraisal's done in these beautiful big properties where there is a garden suite that is generating rental income and everything is nice and clean and reported, but the bank will ask the appraiser to omit the value of the garden suite from the appraisal. So it's, again, I would probably consult, get an appraisal done or whatever you're trying to do before spending any money if the expectation is you can take that money out afterwards, particularly on the garden suite. So, check in? I didn't have that there, so I'm looking at So, you know, in an effort to be a little bit more diversified with the stuff that, you know, we can talk about, because a lot of times we're talking about how to qualify the rules. I wanted to switch gears a little bit because I find that in the current environment, these niche lending programs are becoming a lot more attractive in finding solutions for people who wouldn't otherwise qualify. So I thought I'd identify 3 of them that hopefully some of you guys in the room will see some value in. Starting with the high net worth. We call that NEAT for short, maybe just an industry name, but it's a net income after tax qualifying program. It's like a self-employed program, and then a reverse mortgage, because I've just seen a massive uptick in those. So I thought it would be, especially for investors, so I thought it would be highlight that out a little bit. So okay, so the net worth stuff is pretty straightforward. It's a tough one. We don't see it too often, but the idea is this. If based on your income and your profile, you qualify for a number like, whatever you said, $500,000, and you want to borrow more than $500,000, you can either go to a non-bank lender, maybe a B lender, a credit union, or whoever, who is a little bit more flexible with how much to lend to you at a slightly higher rate. Or if you have, and now when we say net worth, we're not talking about equity in real estate, we're talking about liquidity, like cash, savings, investments. You can use RSPs, things like that. So if you have, here's an example here, $300,000 of savings available to you, which is not going to be used for the down payment, I can now increase your borrowing from $500,000 to $800,000. It's basically like a dollar for dollar type qualifier. So for anyone who's maybe been sitting on a pretty large RSP or with TFSA, maybe you inherited some money, you know, or will be inheriting a little bit of money, you can use this little brief window that money is sitting in your account. You can position it as a net worth and try to help you get access to more borrowing. So we actually had a Volition client. They came across a pretty decent amount of money. Their income was probably average, so they probably would have qualified more than maybe $500,000 or $600,000 just based off of the income. But because they had these funds sitting in their account, I think it was almost $1 million. Because they had these funds sitting in their account for about 90 days, we're able to help them purchase 2 rental properties by leveraging those investments and saying, well, you don't qualify for more than $500,000 or $600,000. We got $1 million in the bank. So let's take you to an A lender, use that cash to close this first property, and with the remainder cash, use that to help you close the second one. So they were able to buy almost $3 million of real estate within those 12 months because they were able to leverage that. Otherwise, they definitely wouldn't have been able to do that with the bank. So again, keep that in mind. If there's access to cash or it's coming in or you already have it, there might be, even if it's only, I think the minimum is $200,000. So you have to have at least $200,000. Even if it's just a little bump of $200,000, there are programs to help you stretch that out and keep it a big bank. So I think that's all I can do. Yeah, good question. So how long do you have to hold it? 90 days is it the shortest, 90 days? It's go shortest, right? Some banks are a year, some banks are 6 months. The nice thing about being a broker is we just spin the wheel, choose the one that works, and that's the one we go with. So we're not limited to that rule. Yeah, also, so they have to be in your name in Canada for at least 90 days in typically like a savings, checking, investment, TFSA, RSP type account. It can't be a locked-in account. There's restrictions around that. Or a margin account. Yeah, so if you're borrowing money to invest, you can't do that because it's not really real money for the bank. Yeah, but if you got the money sitting there, maybe you sold some real estate. Did anybody sell real estate in the last 12 months? Somebody? Probably. Maybe you have some proceeds from the sale of real estate. Put that in TFSA, let's sit on that for 90 days. I can potentially leverage that as a high net worth. So as you know, this is why it's important for us to have conversations and understand your goals and needs, so we can pivot and create what we call a blueprint to make sure that we have a solution in place for you. So maybe you're not ready today, but in 3 months, we can put a solution that you are cool with and are able to now, go to the market with the Volition team and find something. So again, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a bunch of money sitting in the bank. It could be moments in time where we can leverage. I probably shouldn't be saying that, but this is not recorded. Yeah.
Well, we'll cut that part.
So, yeah. It could be, yeah, of course. So anything, non-registered is okay. The only, so think of any sort of savings except for locked-in accounts and margin accounts. Everything else is fair game. Non-registered, TFSA. So non-registered, RSP is okay, but not locked in are like RIFs or LIRAs. So if you work at an employer, $100,000 in a retirement account, you've left that employer, they typically move it into a locked-in account usually. That's not acceptable because you can't access it until you're a certain age.
Joint accounts?
So I get where your mind is going with this. Yes, joint accounts. As long as your name is on the statements. Yes. Some banks are cheeky. They'll say, well, Matt, your $1 million is actually this other person, so we're only going to use half of it. That's possible, I guess. But yeah, joint accounts. Yeah, we had one recently. Just trying to think the example. Oh, so she came across her father passed away, and she became a co-borrower, co-applicant on all her mom's accounts. That's what it was. On all her checkings and investments and so on. So for 90 days, she had a bunch of cash, which was in both her and her mom's name. But generally, the banks allow you to do have your own statement, which just has your name on it. So she gave us 90-day history, we presented all the information to the bank, and we were able to qualify for this program, which she definitely never qualified on her own. So yeah, you can again take advantage of this however you read between the lines. Yeah, these are available with just off the top of my head, Scotia, CIBC, TD, HSBC. I'm probably missing some others. Yeah, this is not like a private lender. I mean, the private lenders do anything really, but yeah, this is a regular bank. Yeah, banks. Scotia, TD, CIBC. Oh, that's a good question. Are your rates going to be higher? I think for the most part across the board, the rates are the same. Rates are the same. So there is a requirement you have to have some level of income. It depends on the lender. I kind of want to say it's 10 or 20K minimum. Let's say 25. Yeah. I mean, again, this is not the type of lending where I don't have any income, but I have a bunch of cash. This is not that sort of solution. That would be more like a straight up equity. This is more like I just don't have enough income to qualify, but I need at least 25K of income. And I have some cash in the bank. Again, the cash in the bank can't be used for the down payment. So if you only have 250, do you need 250 for the down payment? That doesn't count. Yeah, it's got to be Canada. That's good. Well, I guess the US, I don't know if we've had to do a US one. Unless it's like a US bank that's also in Canada. I think we've had an exception with a TD or it was an HSBC. But I would say for the most part, it has to be in Canada. I mean, it's already a high risk type solution, so they want to make sure that this is legitimate in the country.
Sure. We talked a while back about some incoming OSFI restrictions. Will the high network program be impacted by that?
Okay, so OSFI. So earlier this year, we talked about how OSFI, which is one of the financial regulator, was introducing, I think there was at least 3 major changes to qualify. I'm happy to come back probably the next couple of weeks or next few months because they haven't actually formalized anything or come out with anything. But there were a couple of proposals to make it even harder to qualify for lending. We just haven't seen the outcome of that. So they're in the deliberation stages now, and I guess they're consulting with whoever needs to be consulted, but we haven't actually heard formally what the decision was, so I don't know. But I'm happy to come back and tell you, hopefully not bad news. I think, I kind of want to say it was October, November that they were announcing all this. I think it's October. So we kind of got a newsletter on a regular basis, and we're more than happy to share with anyone on the team who's not already getting it. We would have included that there, but we're happy to talk to you guys about it, or some format. I'll have a question next week on that one. Anyone on this? All right, what do we got next? Okay, this one's actually great. The net income after taxes. How many of you guys are self-employed? I'll get like a decent amount. There's probably more who haven't put up a hand. So being self-employed, one of the advantages is you get to write off all kinds of stuff. But very often, individuals that are self-employed will report lower income than they're actually earning. That's just a fact. And although there are some programs for self-employed individuals that help them with borrowing, generally the rule of thumb is whatever you reported for 2 years in a row, that's the number we're going to use to determine your borrowing. So I don't care if your business made $10 million. If you paid yourself a $100,000 salary for 2 years, for the most part, without any special programs or exceptions, we're going to use 100 grand. So you can imagine, obviously, you know, self-employed individuals are at a big disadvantage, because I would argue someone who's self-employed or who's entrepreneurial can probably, you know, if they were to lose their jobs or their business, get back on their feet and create something. Whereas, you know, perhaps a salary person, if you're in a very niche industry, maybe it'll be a little longer to get back into the industry. So that's my argument. That's just not how it works in the lending world. So this is an interesting program. So specifically, if you're incorporated, not a sole proprietor. So if you're incorporated and your business has retained earnings or your business has net income, so meaning, I don't know if I have an example I do it. I don't. Doesn't matter. Let's say your business does $1 million of revenues, and after expenses, you show $500,000 of profit or net income. And then after taxes, you're down to $400,000. So that's net income after taxes, 400 grand. So we're able to use up to 60% of that business profit in addition to whatever salary you already paid yourself as well, to determine what your borrowing power is. So that's massive. So for anyone who is incorporated and legitimately has good revenues and good income in their business, this is a great way to stay with a big bank lender and get access to normal lending. Yeah, it's kind of a lot to say about that. I mean, we don't be too technical. We're getting into a whole business case. Again, you know, if you are reporting certain amounts of profits in your business, this is the way you do it. We like to consult with a lot of clients, typically around their tax season, and we usually recommend if you're about to file your taxes and you want to buy some real estate, let's have a conversation. Because perhaps instead of you having to pay yourself a slightly higher dividend or salary just to make your file work, maybe you can keep that income in your business and I can still make this file work, and you can save some money on your taxes and get a better mortgage. So there is a little bit of strategy and consultation that we can do if, you know, this is where your bucket would fall. So I don't know if any questions. This is more like a one-on-one question. If you have anything, happy to answer on this one. And, okay, so I do an example. I didn't know how to, all right. So this example, on the left side, this particular individual pays himself a dividend of 100 grand. So for that $100,000 of max borrowing power, again, on average, 400,000. Exact same person, if their business also reported net income of 120,000, I can now use 220, so I've almost nearly doubled that, more than doubled that volume power. Exact same person, exact same business. We just asked them the question, does your business have any income? And that changes the whole formula quite a lot. So, again, something that we use quite a bit. I think it's a reverse order, so I have just a handful of slides, so I didn't have a question. This is for residential mortgage lending, yeah. For commercial mortgage lending, I don't want to say this, but you don't need any income in some cases. For commercial lending, we're lending on the financial strength of the asset, which I wish they applied to residential lending in Canada, but that's not how it works. It's all about your personal income and the rental income of the portfolio. So, yeah, it's all residential. So with commercial lending, one element of your file is the net worth. So definitely if you have a business and the file has reached a point where the bank has decided they want to give you X amount, maybe it's not exactly what you needed, what we would normally do is let's show the bank some assets, some savings, let's show that there's actually some, we call it fallback income, or the ability for the client to service this loan in the event, you know, the tenants leave. This is kind of where we would use that. But it wouldn't, this here, on its own for commercial lending wouldn't mean that you're going to get a better mortgage or mortgage rate. Again, primarily it's the financials. You know, I had a client who came to me, she's like, I have a $4 million, close to $4 million multiplex in Toronto, and I have a mortgage for $1 million. There's lots of equity. Can I refinance that? And the reality is we could refinance that, but her refinance is not reliant on her income. It's reliant on the property's ability to generate income. So as high as her income is, I can't just give her this huge mortgage. I have to determine her borrow based on the rental income. So similar, I guess, here. Okay. So reverse mortgage. Anybody know what a reverse mortgage is? Maybe? If you do know what it is, Med Bank, reverse mortgage is really sketchy, sleazy product that preys on older seniors, which is kind of the bad rap it's had. And reverse mortgages, I think, have been in Canada for over 30 years. And for the most part, in our world, it hasn't been a very popular solution. Because the idea behind reverse mortgage is you own your property. Typically, you're at least 55 years or older, so you could be retired or nearing retirement. You may have no mortgage or you may have a small mortgage. But the idea is that you can borrow a certain amount of equity from your home, up to 55% in some cases, and you never have to make a mortgage payment until you die or you sell the property. So you can see why it would be very attractive. So if I'm 70 years old and I have a home worth $1 million and I have no mortgage on that property, I could potentially borrow almost half of that value, take out $500,000 tax-free, and never have to make any mortgage payments on that, and I can use that to do whatever I want with it. So again, but the downside to a reverse mortgage is the interest rate on it is a little bit higher. So the average 1-year rate with a big bank today is in the low 7% range. The average 1-year rate with a reverse mortgage is in the low 8% range. So there's a little bit of a premium. And so the way the reverse mortgage works is if you don't make a mortgage payment on it, you're compounding the interest over and over and over and over. It can be very attractive and it can be very strategic, and we're seeing a lot of investors use this. For example, you know, if you're a first-time buyer and you don't have $200,000, or your parents do, but they don't necessarily want to lend it to you because they want to retire and they don't want to set up a line of credit or a mortgage, which is normally been the traditional model. We've said to them, well, you know, if your parents are willing to consider a reverse mortgage, perhaps they take the money out of their home. There's 0 payments to you, 0 payments to them. You use that money for the purpose of buying your home or rental property, and then we can put a plan together where either you just leave it forever, and that balance will slowly go up over 10, 20, 30 years, or perhaps in 3 to 5 years, if you have enough equity in your home, you can now take that out, pay off the balance of the interest that your parents lent to you, and now you just got into the real estate market. It obviously helps cash flow, and I think I have a table a few slides in to show you a reverse mortgage down payment with no monthly payment and a HELOC sort of down payment, right? So that's kind of the general gist of a reverse mortgage. And we're definitely seeing a lot more of these. Like, there's a massive uptick, and I can only imagine as Canadians get a little bit older, as people want to retire a little sooner, and as people realize they don't necessarily want to downsize anymore, this is a way to keep your house, not have to downsize, and still access a lot of equity. So again, in this example, $1.5 million residence, not crazy for Toronto. This person can hold $600,000, never make any mortgage payments. If they have a mortgage, actually we got it where they have a small mortgage, and they're saying to us, I want to work for 2-3 more years to pay off this mortgage. And we say, well, what if you were to stop working, no mortgage, retired in 30 days? Like, that's pretty powerful for a lot of people, especially ones that are having a really hard time as well. So I don't know if you had a question there. Yeah, that's a good question. Can you do a reverse mortgage on a rental? So technically, yes. The way it would work is you have to always do a reverse mortgage on your principal residence. But some of the reverse mortgage lenders will allow you to tag, meaning I can add like a rental or a cottage, so actually up to 3 properties, and use that asset value to extract a pretty decent amount of funds. So yeah, it is possible. Not everyone does that though. So if you've got a cottage free and clear, a house that's free and clear, and maybe a rental or some condo maybe your kids are using for university, you can actually tag all of that and extract, again, it's tax-free to do whatever you want with it. So you can invest that money if you like and earn 6% on the GIC or 10+% in the market, right? So that's kind of the potential for that. Now, I won't cover all these here. Just some of the
I think we probably covered most of these. Now, the third point there that I didn't mention, so with reverse mortgage, if your clients are like, I don't want to take a huge lump sum, there is the option to also just have monthly payments made. It's almost like a retirement plan. Maybe take out $200,000, pay off your mortgage, now you're mortgage free in terms of your payments, and we can give you $1,000 a month for till you die, sort of thing. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. You know, again, this is a conversation more for individuals that are at that retirement stage. Now, one of the big, I guess, obvious issues is, well, I'm going to have zero equity in my home, so I don't like the idea of getting a reverse mortgage. So I put together a chart that I think is pretty fair. So on the left, we have a home value of $1.5 million, and this particular client took out $500,000 reverse mortgage. So the remaining equity was $1 million. Pretty easy. Okay. So what I assumed, and you guys tell me if I'm aggressive, is I assumed appreciation of 4% for the next, what says it, 20 years. Would you say that in Toronto, 4% a year on average is probably reasonable, I think. It's been reasonable for the last 30. So I assume 4% growth for 20 years, which means that house will be almost $4 million in 20 years. Now, I think I was using a rate of 8.2% on this reverse mortgage, which is probably high for the next 20 years. I don't think it will remain that high, but again, conservative. That $500,000 turns into $2.2 million debt, which sounds crazy, but look at the bottom number, which is the equity. So if you were to sell that home, you'd still have $1.2 million equity in the home. So the number one question we have is, well, if I never pay it, I'm going to have this massive mortgage. That is true, but your home will also continue to appreciate. Whereas if you were to sell your home and buy a condo or whatever, you're going to have this smaller appreciation. So again, this is just a very basic illustration. But you know, reverse mortgage can be a really powerful tool for our clients. As an investor, I thought this graph could be interesting. So on a $1.5 million purchase, if you were to use a down payment from a traditional source, which might be as a HELOC, it could also be a mortgage, doesn't matter at this point, with the rates. You've got a roughly $1,800 payment just to service the HELOC, right? So we're borrowing 20% on the HELOC. The remainder amount is set up as a regular mortgage. So with today's rates, I'm using relatively higher rates to be conservative. $7,500 is the mortgage payment on that 1.2. Again, I'm being conservative, probably be a little less than that. Taxes and rental income. On the first example, you're negative $2,800. On the second example, you're negative $1,000. It's a big difference. So if you have access to a reverse mortgage, and this is something that makes sense for not only the person getting a reverse mortgage, but also receiving the funds, it makes a lot of sense to close that cash flow gap that we have obviously seen in the last 2 years or so. I'll do that. I'm happy to share the slides by the way, so you guys can do whatever you want to do. Yeah.
Which one do you want to ask? Okay, so everybody down.
So on the left here, 1.5 is the value, $500,000 is how much was taken out. The remaining amount of equity is $1 million. 20 years fast forward, the house appreciates at 4% per year. It's worth just under $4 million. Your original mortgage was, there we go. I didn't do it anymore. The original mortgage is $500,000, but it's increased to $2.2 million. So the difference is the remaining equity. Yeah, I guess the $500,000 throws everyone off. But basically the total amount is the 2.2. Sorry, I'm wrong. The reverse mortgage plus the interest is 2.7. They don't disclose it here. The difference works out to be 1.2 million. So they're showing you how much they lend you plus how much interest you accrue, which actually works out to be about 2.7. And if you take 2.7 minus 2.9, it should be that 1.2 number. So that's good eye. That's the math. So again, using variability, and that's assuming a 4% growth. I would argue with hope that the Toronto market sees a lot more than 4%, which means that $4 million will probably be a lot higher than that. So.
Do you have to sell right away?
No, you can die.
No, what I meant.
So that's a good question. So when you pass away, or when the person passes away,
if there's two individuals, so husband and wife, and the husband passes away, the wife continues to live there, nothing changes, it continues to go on. When the second person passes away, it's treated like a regular mortgage. So it goes to the estates. If there's a balance, the estate gives an opportunity to either pay out the mortgage and take on the debt, or they just sell the asset, pay off the debt, the money stays in the estate. So it's like a regular mortgage. They guarantee though, actually funny enough, so one of the providers is Chip, one of the biggest ones in Canada. You probably see ads for them. There's a few of them. I think there's about 3 of them right now. Chip is the big one. So I did a video with the VP explaining this reverse mortgage maybe last year. And she said on our web, because I asked her, I'm like, what if we're in Alberta a few years ago and the values were going down and this mortgage keeps going up? Like, can you take my home away? And she's like, we guarantee that we will never take your home away. And then funny enough, before I posted the video, she's like, our legal team reviewed the video and said, I can't say that. Even though that we do it, I don't want to publicly just put it out there, but they do. It's kind of like your legal note at the beginning, trying to protect yourselves. But technically, they argue that if your home doesn't go up in value and the mortgage exceeds, we won't take your home away. So, yeah, again, it's a solution that can be used either just as a financial planning tool if you want to retire. But in this room, we've seen it used for first-time buyers who have access to this money through their parents, or maybe just parents who want to invest. They want to find a way to, stretch out their retirement quite a bit. Second check-in. Yeah.
New to Canada programs?
I don't think they've changed anything. Obviously non-residents are a problem with getting access to financing. New to Canada, I mean, the banks have maintained most of the program. So, if you have a 35% down payment and you could show up to, depends on the lender, up to 5 years of monthly payments for that mortgage, some banks will make it very easy to get a loan. So I think HSBC, for example, which we recently introduced in our world, 35% down, you have at least 5 years worth of mortgage payments in an account, and you're on a student visa, you might be, and as long as you have some sort of job, you might be able to get a mortgage with just that, even if it doesn't really make sense. So typically, I wouldn't leverage it for investment purposes, because the banks are not too keen on giving someone who doesn't have a full-time job a $1.5 million loan. Usually it's a smaller $500,000, $1 million or less type transaction, and they're all done on an exception basis. So it has to make sense. If it has several units, it starts to get a little bit more challenging. But I would say the New to Canada programs haven't changed too much. The New to Canada programs are really just to offset the fact that you probably don't have any credit in Canada. Generally, you have down payment, you have a job, it's coming to Canada with no credit. A lot of the banks are a little bit more willing to make that easier for you to get access to money. So I wouldn't say, Matt, that there's any advantages that we would try to take, leverage with that program.
What's the longest grace period right now?
The longest grace period?
Yeah.
For like not paying?
Before you start paying principal. That you can get interest only?
Oh, I think I know the question. So I think the question was, what's the longest grace period that the banks will allow you to make interest only payments? Well, a lot of people are negative. I'm just curious, you don't have to put up your hand if you don't want to, but anyone in this room have a variable rate mortgage that has gone up, obviously, almost 5%, but you have not seen any change to your payments, and number 2 is you haven't been asked to increase your payments. Is there anybody with TD? Or what bank is it? Desjardins? Yeah, they do that.
I have our RBC.
RBC?
One mortgage.
So I think the highest we saw was an 88-year amortization.
Well, I have 99.
Is it 99? It probably stops at 99. It's probably higher than that. So I was actually just curious because we actually haven't had any clients who were forced to increase their payments to get in line with the principal until the renewal kicks in. At the renewal, they're going to adjust it. That's wild. Yeah, so we haven't seen anyone who's been told by the bank you have to automatically adjust your payments. And I think someone mentioned it, you or Matt, CMHC behind the scenes. CMHC is a mortgage default insurance provider. Typically you would use CMHC either for commercial or if you're doing less than 20% down. But behind the scenes, their mandate is also to make sure that people can access, mortgages, but also maintain their payments. So if you're in trouble, we haven't seen too many actually, fortunately, at least maybe just our clients. But if you're in trouble, you're behind on your payments, the banks will sometimes leverage CMHC insurance to find a solution to keep the mortgage going. But again, we haven't seen anyone forcefully top up their payments, but on renewal, you're likely going to see your payments change. One interesting thing that we have noted is some banks like TD, and I'm not picking on them, on renewal, they've said to the client, and this is where they have a bit of a competitive edge, they might say, you have a 90-year amortization with us, your payment's $2,000. We can either keep your amortization as is, but this is your rates, or we'll bring you back to where you're supposed to be, maybe it's 25 years, and this is your rate. Both rates are generally not that great, and because the client might be in a position where they can no longer qualify elsewhere, they basically have no choice but to take the rate. So we have seen that almost, the banks are taking advantage, right? So I would say before your renewal, just chat with someone, understand how you can go in a little bit more educated and negotiate to your advantage, right? So, oh, the threshold for insurance? Yeah, so the question was, right now, if you want to purchase a home with less than 20% down, your threshold is $1 million, unfortunately. Funny enough is, I think just before COVID, I interviewed someone at CMHC, and I have it recorded somewhere, it's somewhere on the web, and I asked her that question. This is pre-COVID, because the market was crazy then, and she said that they had already approved a $1.5 million threshold for Toronto and Vancouver. I'm going to assume COVID happened, and they put that on pause, so I can only imagine that that would be a good time to announce that. Hey, we just made $1.5 million mortgages purchases possible less than 20% down, because I think that's going to go against the Bank of Canada's mandate to slow things down. But I can almost guarantee you that when the rates start to come down, that would probably be something that would come out. But it has been approved. It just hasn't been released because COVID threw the timing off, and now with the rates being so high, it's probably delayed that. But it is something that has already been put to paper, and it's just a matter of time. So it's 5% up to $500,000, and then 10% on the remaining, the last 500,000. Go up. Say it again. Again, $1 million in a market like Toronto and Vancouver, unfortunately, is not going to buy you too much beyond maybe a condo. And yeah, that $1.5 million range is something that's necessary because, how could you, we've got a lot of clients that have great incomes, but their issue is they don't have $300,000 to buy a home, a starter home, in some cases. But they do have the ability to service the loan, but at $1 million, they don't want to buy a condo or a townhouse. So I think it's a policy that we will see. It's just, again, bad timing. Shouldn't be excited enough for real estate as a government, I guess. All right, so trends. I like this graph, and I'm just going to leave it there for 5 seconds so you guys can look at it. Because it's a great graph. It's one of our most repurposed. What's that word? When you're retweet or not tweet, reposted. Yeah. Okay, so let me explain this graph. So I don't know where rates are going. Nobody in this room knows where rates are going. We can only speculate based on the data that we have today where we think rates are going. And that data changes every single month. So according to some of the smarter economists in the country, I think I highlighted 4 big banks here, Scotia, CIBC, TD, and BMO. This is free information. You can Google this on their website, you can search it on their websites. You normally want to search economic rate forecasts, and every single bank puts this out. It's free, right? So we just aggregated it all into this nice, beautiful little table. So the purpose of this is to show where these lenders believe and are making their internal business decisions off of where they think rates will go. So they're using the Bank of Canada rate. So the Bank of Canada rate is currently 5%, which determines what our prime rate is. So to translate that to this group in a way that makes more sense to you guys, it's the prime rate is 7.2%. So prime is 7.2. Prime is directly correlated with that 5% number at the top there, and that's where we're at today. So when that 5% number goes up, prime goes up. When it goes down, unfortunately, it doesn't always go down the same ratio historically. So if the Bank of Canada decides to decrease rates by 0.5%, it's very possible that some banks might not give you the 0.5% savings. That's been the case in the past anyways. So anyways, for Scotiabank, let's use them as an example. They believe that at the end of 2024, Q4, that rates will go down by 1.25%. And then, who's the most conservative? BMO. BMO thinks that rates will only go down 0.75%. So I would say you have a range between 0.75 to 1.5% by the end of next year of rate discounts, which means if you have a variable rates, that's anywhere from 75 points to 1.5% rate drop, which I think everyone would appreciate, right? And I think the consensus is that there is some discount, some rate drop. And this is the information we know today. So that has shifted the recommendations we've been giving to clients in terms of what you should be doing with your mortgage. I think that's the next slide. Okay, so I think I've got like 4 or 5 strategies that we can get into. So the first one, actually before I do this, any questions about this? Okay, cool. So one solution we've been recommending quite a bit. So question? Well, this is the Bank of Canada rate. So the Bank of Canada influences basically everything. It does influence the lending rates as well. No. Funny enough.
This is the Bank of Canada forecast.
Yeah,
What
this is
the banks believe the Bank of Canada will, not their mortgage rates.
Yeah, so these are mortgage rates. This is just the Bank of Canada rate, which sets the benchmark for everything in our economy for the most part. Right? So I think it's safe to assume that if the average economists believe rates will drop by 1%, whether it's a B rate or an A rate or a credit union or whatever, you'll probably see borrowing costs come down by about 1%. In that, I guess, that respective bucket. Okay, so strategy number 1, if you got a mortgage coming up for renewal or if you're getting a home and so on. So I like the 1-year rate. It's not the sexiest rate, it's the highest rate. But it's high because there's a lot of uncertainty around a 1-year term. We don't know, we know that in the next 5 years, rates will likely be lower. We don't know with 100% certainty that in the next year that rates will be lower. So there's a lot of premium, risk premium, and uncertainty built into pricing around a 1 year, which is why it's the highest. So a lot of clients will say, hey Hugo, why do you tell me to take a 1-year rate at 7.4? But I can log in for 5 years at 6.5, and I say, well, on paper that makes sense. It looks lower. But 5 years is a long time. Keep in mind that we've only been in this high rate environment for a little over a year and a half. Do you think, I've got a 5 and a 7-year-old. 5 years, one of them didn't exist. So that's a long time. So we have to keep your timeline, reflective of the rate you're selecting. So I would argue that for some people, not everyone, if you can't sleep at night, maybe this is not the option. For a lot of people, a 1-year rate might make sense. Take a little bit of a higher rate today, knowing that in the next 12 months, you can renegotiate this into whatever is available at that time. One of our lenders actually has a 6-month early renewal window, which we use all the time. So which means that 6 months into your loan, you're able to early renew with that lender and take anything that's possible. So you're paying a little premium for that, but I would argue that that can be a very attractive option for the people that just need a little flexibility. So 1 year could be the way to go. But so if you are completely focused on maintaining the lowest possible payment and the lowest possible rate, I probably personally wouldn't recommend anything beyond a 2 or 3 year fixed rate. I think it gives you just enough opportunity to see rates come down to a level where you can now refinance, and you'll likely pay a little bit of a premium in the next 2 or 3 years for the certainty of that rate. But again, if you can't sleep at night, you want to lock in your payment, some of the lowest rates start to hit that 3-year mark. So when you get your renewal letters and you're seeing that 7% plus rate for 1 year, and you're looking at the 2 and 3 saying, oh, that 6.5 3-year rate's looking great, there's a big difference. The banks are definitely pushing the 3-year rate. You should always be a little concerned if the banks are promoting and pushing those 3 and 4 and 5-year rates. It's probably because they know that you're probably going to break that mortgage and have a massive penalty in the next couple of years. Because I would imagine I don't think rates are going down to 1% anytime soon, if ever, but I do think that rates in the next 2 or 3 years can easily be 2% or more lower. And if you start to see that, hey, I can get access to these lower rates, but I have this penalty, I think a lot of people will start breaking the mortgages. The banks know that, and that's why they're offering much better discounts in these terms. So again, keep that in mind. 5-year variable have all of a sudden become my best friend all over again. So we haven't touched 5-year variable in a year, I don't know, a long time, because it just doesn't make sense. Traditional, so a 5-year variable, for everyone who doesn't know, is going to fluctuate based on the Bank of Canada. It'll go up. It's been going up in the last 2 years, but it can also go down as well. The issue with the variable rate recently has been the bank's discounts on the variable rates have been very bad. So, as an example, variable rate could be prime, which is 7.2%, less 0.2, which means your rate's 7%. It's very difficult when rates are going up to tell a client, hey client, you should take this 7% rate with the possibility that it'll go even higher. That's a tough sell, right? And we haven't been suggesting those almost in the last year. But we've actually seen with a handful of tiny little pioneer lenders a much bigger discounting window, where we have one lender going as low as prime less 90 for their regular business. So I think the rentals are prime less 70, right? So prime less 70 on a rental takes your rate down to 6.5%. That looks pretty damn good when you know that we're probably at the top of the rate environment, very likely, and the next move will likely be just sort of downhill slope. So if you can get a discount on variable under, I would say, at least 50, or sorry, more than 50, you might want to consider variable again. Because I do think that if in the next 1 or 2 months the data continues to support the fact that the Bank of Canada will likely not increase rates, I think it's a pretty safe bet to go back into a variable rate or consider it, because you can lock into great discounts and ride that over the next 5 years. So, variable. Yes. Do you have the ability to lock in at a lower rate? So with the variable rate, there's a couple additional features that are great. So one of them is at any moment in time, you can lock in your variable rate into a fixed rate. The term has to be equal. So if you've got like 4 years remaining, you have to do a 4 or 5 year fix. So perhaps in the first 1 or 2 years, you see some savings in the variable rate, but now rates have gone to a level where you can deal with, maybe 5-4%. You can then lock that in at any point with most lenders with no penalty. It's got to be 3 or more. 2 or more. So whatever term is remaining, you have to match that or be longer.
Yeah, okay, so but 2 years, you get a good rate, so you have to do that in 3
So if you're 2 years into the mortgage and you have 3 years left, you can lock into a 3-year or more term with no penalty. The other benefit, as a lot of you guys know with the variable, is you want to get out of a variable rate, it's 3 months of interest. Pretty straightforward. So a significant, especially for the individuals here who are buying real estate, refinancing, take money out, buy more, sometimes that comes with penalties. A variable rate is going to allow you to keep those costs down, right? So that's a good question. So we work with almost every bank in the country, and they will offer a 3 and a 5 year variable. I don't even know why it exists, the 3 year, but the 3 year does exist. It's almost always a worse rate. It doesn't make sense. Like, I would always take a 5 year fix. The rate's always significantly lower, but there is a shorter term. I guess it's to give you an option to renegotiate a shorter term. But if you have a very generous variable rate and you believe in the variable rate, I would just keep renewing it into a variable rate. I mean, historically, a variable has done better. In the last 2 years, it hasn't. It's been very painful. But I think if you look at your mortgage as a 5 year term, you probably would have been better off. If you have a short term remaining on your mortgage and you're worried about rates, maybe you have a variable rate and the discount is not great, you might want to consider asking your bank if they can just lock it in. So if you've got like a 1 year left and you're really worried about rates, you can probably lock into a 1 year rate that might be better than what you're currently getting right now. So again, this is probably the least popular one, and this is very niche, but I get a lot of phone calls and they're like, what should I do? And sometimes this is the suggestion. It's just locking in if you have a short term. I probably wouldn't be locking into a 5 year rate right now, but a short term, I think that does make some sense. Okay, so here, and again, HELOCs used to be a lot more attractive for cash flow because HELOCs are interest only, right? So meaning if you're borrowing money on a HELOC, you only have to pay the interest. Normally that interest was significantly lower than a mortgage because a mortgage has interest and principal. With HELOC rates now anywhere between 7.2 to 8.2, that premium on the rate no longer makes it such an attractive option. But if you want a fully open solution, I have a lot of clients that just don't know what they want, and they see that in the next few months will be very decisive in terms of where the Bank of Canada will end up. I think by the end of this year, assuming nothing changes and we don't have any new viruses or anything else, I think that we'll likely see a little bit more confidence from the Bank of Canada and communication that the rates will likely start to come down. If that's the case, it now allows you to a little bit more strategically put yourself into a mortgage solution that you can ride out for the next couple of years, right? So if you just don't know and you want full open term, get into a HELOC. It's open. You can get out of it at any time. It's interest only, so your payments are a little bit lower. But more importantly, you can convert that down the road.
And I think, look at that, I don't do that. That's it.
We're running a little bit behind time, so just in the interest of catching up a little bit, if it's cool with you, maybe we could take any questions from Hugo directly during our networking break, because I want to make sure that people still have a chance to talk with each other, discuss their real estate and make those networking connections. So if that works, we can do that. And so we'll take 15 minutes, have our networking break, and then we'll come back. What I really want, the next section really is, now that we have kind of the updates and what's happening with mortgages, lending strategy, how do we actually apply this? Like, how do we take this information and apply it to the current market? So that's what we're going to talk about next time. Okay, we'll see everybody back in 15 minutes. Okay, guys. So, we kick this off with a quote from the Venerable Warren Buffett. Be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Speaking to what we've seen kind of happening within the market, so it's interesting. I just had a conversation about this. It has been tougher to execute on both buy and sell these last couple of months. So I think it is very early days turning around right now. But let's assume that what we're seeing is a bit of a blip. Let's talk through what it's like when it's a slow market and kind of what's still happening with it in a slow market. Okay, so what we have seen as a result, there are as a result of slowing the market, there are still people that need to sell. Right? There are people who have entered a property. I won't say what's up there. Enter a property with the idea that they were going to be living in it together as husband and wife. And maybe that relationship changed, they have to sell it. Things like this happen all the time, guys. And now they need to sell it, right? Because it's not going to be a home for two anymore. So, we're seeing things like this. We're also seeing people who have purchased condos, pre-construction condos, who are kind of intending to close. Maybe they can't qualify for their mortgage anymore, right? Because interest rates have literally gone up 5% since the time that they initially acquired it. So all these bad news stories that you're hearing in the media, we are seeing them ourselves. Luckily these are not clients that we're directed to buy these investments, but we are seeing these things. We have assignments, we have a renovated home in Portugal right now. We have infill development, 200,000 less than just from springtime. So over the course of a couple of months, dropped 200K in asking price. The ARVs have come down as well for that infill development. There's still about 500K in profits per acre. So people are looking to do those kind of developments or trying to jump on opportunities like this. We've also got triplex opportunities as well that we're considering. So this is, folks who are looking at living, right? Instead of spending your money and buying a condo and having it 100% as an expense, living in a top unit, a nice top unit like this, and having two units paid towards your mortgage. So you're seeing more opportunities like this come up as well, in female locations like we're in. And I would say at discounted values from what we were seeing just 6 months ago as well. High cap rates, or high for Toronto cap rates. Question? If you'd like to know details, we can talk about them with you individually. Some of these are privately listed, so they don't want the numbers publicly circulated. But we'll have to have a one-on-one conversation on some of this stuff. Does that answer? That's why we don't have the numbers up there. But what was that? So we also have properties which are straight investment properties. We're seeing cap rates of these trading above 5%, which within the city, Toronto has not seen turnkey, brand new, renovated, less than a year old properties trading at cap rates like this. Usually these properties run at a premium. They used to be like low 4 caps. So, if you're familiar with capitalization rates, it's a massive price change happening in these kind of properties. Are you gonna be, massively cash flow positive? No, because the interest rates are still quite high. You'll at best be break even, maybe slightly under. But you're acquiring like a brand new premium property. And all you need is Hugo's predictions to be right. I'm putting out a new Hugo. All you need is a slight drop in interest rates if you're on something variable. And then you're now to cash flow positive territory on something that is usually quite expensive over the city.
Sorry. What's the COA?
Sorry, go ahead.
What's the COA on the previous slide? What's
COA?
COA is Committee of Adjustments. Oh, so basically when you're going to do one of these large builds, oftentimes, if you're doing it yourself, you have to go to Committee of Adjustments for minor variances because, you've got slightly more density, you've got more, you have less parking, like there's always these things you have to go and get variances from. This is done, right? You're trading at over 5 cap. You don't have to do anything, like no hardship, no 2 years of trying to make this work. This particular property, I'm not sure how long this took to build, but we build these pretty often. We're hopefully taking the group to see a complete, almost completed one in November. It's almost 2 years that I took our time.
Sign up for that meetup, by the way. November.
Yeah.
November.
And it took our clients almost 2 years to go from deal closing to completion. It's tough to do large multifamily. I mean, they have gone nuts. They're building a high-end luxury multifamily, and they'll absolutely make a ton of money off of it, but it's a long process. Even in cities like Hamilton, I use the bad H word around here. But yeah, we're seeing cash flowing properties in some of the B cities as well. So anyway, if you're interested in some of these, let us know. Like I said, a couple of these are private sales, so we're keeping the numbers off here just to respect the privacy of our clients.
Private means off market.
Oh yeah,
off market.
These
For
are
off
off-market
market deals, right?
Yeah.
Is that where Center Mall?
So is this one? Is this our side?
Is it near Center Mall, like
Near Center Mall? Oh, like within Hamilton?
yeah.
There's a big, long LRT in Hamilton. It's not just by one station. There's a new proposed LRT, which is bisecting the entire city.
Sorry, I thought you meant
Yeah, so I actually don't know in particular where this exact property is within Hamilton, but I know it's going to be proposed LRT. If you want more information, just let us know. You can get those details. Yeah, I shouldn't believe this many. He's talking about. Sorry, I have a question on that. Yeah, oh, sure. Oh. There you go.
Who's advisory?
We only actually have one QR code, and then we figure out what to do with it after. Oh yeah, it's at the table if you ever need. If you ever need. Okay, we're gonna start talking so I don't have to see that here.
Alright. Finally, my time to shine. So, 8:49, I have 11 minutes. But first, don't mess with monkey bars. So if I start garbling and talking nonsense, it could be a concussion I incurred just a couple days ago. So.
Or just a normal night.
Or just a normal night. Or maybe I just had a few too many beers. Right. So the question that you presumably came to, why you came here tonight. Well, I mean, probably you came to listen to Hugo, but I like to think that you came to listen to me. Should I buy now or should I wait till 2024? Essentially, you're asking us to pull out the Volition crystal ball and give you an indication of what it is that we think is going to happen over the next several months. So let's get started. Actually, before we get started, I know that I'm already going off track and going off on a tangent, but for you people here who decided to stick around, I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus. And this is going to play off of some of the stuff Hugo was talking about. All those suckers who left do not get this information. I want to talk about reverse mortgages a little bit. It may not land for you how freaking powerful this is. Everyone looks at it very topically, at a very superficial level, and go, oh, well, that doesn't make, I don't see value in that. Wrong. There might be a ton of value in that. So I'll give you a very, very quick example. Phil's going to kick my ass for already going off track. I'm not even on my first slide yet. But imagine a $2 million home that your parents own. Right? Say I'm a millennial or I'm a Gen X or something like that, and I can't get in the property ladder, or I want to invest, or I just don't have enough money, or I don't qualify for enough mortgage, something like that. Right? Imagine your parents have, let's just say, a $2 million home fully paid out. Reverse mortgage, let's just say 50% loan to value, they can take out $1 million reverse mortgage, right? No mortgage payments. And all it needs to be is 65 to get up to 50% loan to value, something like that, right? I get a little bit older. But imagine mom and dad hand that down to 40-something-year-old child, not a child, obviously, but still their child. They take that $1 million and they add it to a $500,000 mortgage that they do qualify for, right? So now they can purchase a $1.5 million property. $1.5 million property we know generates somewhere between $7,000 and $7,500 in rents. There's about $1,000 of expenses, so take that off, $6,500 net. That $500,000 mortgage that they have translates to about $3,000. So deduct that from the $6,500, $3,500 positive cash flow. That's a result of not having to debt service that $1 million reverse mortgage through the equity taken by their parents. 40-year-old child could hand that $3,500 back to their parents and give them an extra $42,000 a year in their retirement. How powerful is that? So now, mom and dad, who helped in their retirement, 40-year-old child has an investment property here in Toronto. Win, 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 all around. So boom, we just solved your investment challenges. Yes? I'm sorry? It would be taxable. What part is taxable? The income from the rental. Depreciate the building. Bring your back taxes down to zero. Boom. Next. There's a much larger conversation, and this was not the point of my presentation. you're looking at it myopically. You're looking at just that one property. But if you've got property appreciation and cash flow coming in across multiple properties, I will get to this in 1 second and you'll understand. So hold that thought. It's not going to answer your question directly, but it's not intended to. So, but I'm going to try to circle back to it. I understand what you're saying, right? Okay, now let's switch gears a little bit. Now the question that everyone always asks, the question that we've gotten over the past several months, inevitably is always, where's the market going? Is this a good time to invest? Is there a bubble? All that kind of crap, right? We hear that all the time, and a lot in the last few months. So I want to change the conversation. I want to demonstrate to you, for example, I want to put interest rates in context, because everyone's talking about interest rate. That's been the topic of conversation for like the last 18 months at least. What?
We might need to figure out the structure of this.
What?
Because it's 9 o'clock.
It's 9 o'clock? Okay. No, telling me I'm already out of time.
Well, sidebar. Where we have the market and all that, right? Why don't you make tackle that? And then we can do that.
So you want to do the Q&A first?
Yeah, and then shelve this for another month. That was good.
Shelve this for another month. Okay, so. Wow. This is the most deflating moment of my life. Okay. Hey, what do you want to talk about? Yes. All right.
No, and the reason is like,
Okay. Okay. So, yada yada yada. Okay. Well, I was going to talk about all these people, and I'm not sure about some of this. Here's one. Oh my God, interest rates. Oh my God, interest rates. And oh my God, interest rates. Let's see the impact of interest rates over the long term. 3%, 5%, 10%. 3%, 5%, 10%. 3%, 5%, 10%. Did you see a difference? There's barely any difference. So obviously, interest rates do play a role, but don't get too hung up on interest rates. Alright, well, alright, I'm skipping. Wait, so next month, we're going to. Alright, so we're going to go to our encore. Okay.
and you know, Matt's slides are actually pretty good. The thing is, I think we need to tell the story properly, and it takes 45 minutes. Because you actually have to walk through the thought process, right? And so maybe next time we'll put it in the front of the mic, and we can do that, yeah. Because I want to make sure that it's got enough time, and he doesn't have to like race through it. Okay, let's run through these quickly then. Just this one. Okay.
It was a Q&A, like.
So yeah, I think this turns into more of a Q&A, kind of like a interactive panel discussion sort of thing.
So these are some things that we have up here. You know, if I am interested in being an investor, or I am an investor buyer, what should I be doing there? If I'm, looking for a primary residence, what's my best course of action? Do you guys just want us to walk you through these scenarios, or are there questions in particular you want us to cover? Hey.
So that wasn't a question, that was a statement.
Oh, okay. Tell me what.
The statement was pre-construction condos.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you what's happening. What we're seeing. There are a number of people. There's a couple categories. There are people who have paid way too much in the beginning, and they did it under the belief that there would be a constant upward movement of the market, and they thought they could assign. These people are pretty screwed. No ways, there's no nice way of putting it, they're pretty screwed. Because one, they've already paid too much to acquire, right? There's a reason we don't send out pre-con construction deals, and when we do, it's really rare. Because the only way you're making money on a construction deal is getting a deal in the beginning. Or you have to buy it for cheap. You have to get in at the very beginning. You have to be what they call platinum VIP plus access. Maybe then, if the market continues to go, and this is speculative, this is high risk. If the market continues to go up, you could potentially assign. Assignments, we talked about it in depth at the last meeting. We'll just call them a difficult, right? You have a regular sale, which is here in difficulty. You can do it in an open market. An assignment, it's private. You're not allowed to. Many developers don't let you list it on an open market, and you have to do it at a discount from the market rate to try to get people interested. The logistics are more complicated because there's more money. The movement of money isn't straightforward. Anyway, much more difficult. So those people, they're in trouble. We know actually quite a number of these folks. They're coming to us after they've bought these things. Not before, we would have told them no, don't buy them. But they're coming into us now. So there's an opportunity, and I wouldn't call these investments, right? If you're looking to buy an investment condo, they don't exist, right? We have a higher bar for what we consider investments in general, and 95% of condos are not actually investments. If you are looking for a place to live, right, or somebody who's looking for a place to live, and you want to get at a much cheaper price than what's currently being traded, yes, that is an opportunity, right? So we are seeing that happen. We are also seeing people who are going to close and they can't afford the new interest rates, right? They can't qualify for the new interest rate, so they have to sell, right? And they have to assign, actually. They're going to be in trouble. And if they can't close, they start paying a penalty to the developer. So we're seeing all these things happening, compounded with a slow market. That's why you're seeing some of these people selling their pre-construction condos for $80,000 off market, $100,000 off market. They don't have a choice. Right? They have to get rid of these places. So I have a client she wants to buy a condo for herself. She's looking to live there. She's specifically looking for these distressed sellers. And I'm like, we unfortunately have a bunch for you. It's a good time to buy a personal residence condo, right? But don't buy it as an investment property. You're still going to be cash flow, majorly cash flow negative.
The average right now,
The average condo, let's say 600 grand, one bedroom, costs you $4,000 a month to carry, and you're only going to get about $2,500 in rents. You're cash flow negative at 80% loans value, 20% down payment, on average about $1,500, right? $1,500 to $2,000 is on average. So yes, principal residence. If you're looking for these distressed sellers, you can find these pre-construction assignments that are coming due pretty soon, and you're trying to offload them. They don't make sense as investments either, unless you're just looking for built-in equity. They make more sense as a primary residence. So if you're buying for your kid and they wants to live there and they want to live, okay, fine, right? Because you're getting a discount off market. But as an investment, still doesn't make much sense. Okay? Do you want to get into
we're going to talk about basically what you see in the market, inventory, stuff like that. Let's get to that.
Yeah, let me take a question quickly. Sure, if there's so the question was, I'm guessing people are doing it to try to
Basically, can you
improve their
repay
payments.
the mortgage quickly?
Yeah, can people go and re-amortize their mortgage to help lower their payments?
Or is it a
I guess
refinance?
for the most part, it's a refinance, which means you're going to break your current mortgage contract, pay a penalty, re-qualify, appraisal, legals, whatever. With some lenders, let's say Scotia, one of our more favorite investor-friendly lenders, they have their what they call the STEP, Scotia Total Equity Plan, STEP. As long as you're doing it within that framework, You still have to pay a penalty to get out of your mortgage, because anytime you break your mortgage is a penalty. And you don't need to requalify. So if you have $1 million step limit and a $500,000 mortgage, and you want to re-amortize it for 30 years to reduce your payment, then one of the solutions could be break the mortgage, take a new mortgage, and stretch it to 30 years. And as long as it's within that $1 million or whatever your limit is, there's no legals or qualifying or appraisal. You're just paying the penalty, whatever fees associated with that. And again, that's why when you're putting a mortgage solution in place, it's not always the rate that should matter. You got to factor in all these flexible features that might matter at some point, like now.
Cool. So let me give a bit of an update on what we're seeing happening right now in the market. So 4 days ago, Florence, because she helps run our back-end searches, right? So we do a lot of deal finding for our clients. 4 days ago, she's like, Ming, sucks. There's nothing. Right? And I, chatting early on, that is the sentiment. People are active in the market. 4 days ago, sucks. And then, but today, we saw like a doubling of inventory. And we expected this to happen closer to after the Labor Day weekend. I don't know. Maybe where people were more on vacation mode. Maybe people were trying to react after the interest rate announcement. But today and yesterday, we saw a ton of more inventory coming in the market. Now, is it all quality? Not as much quality. We're seeing a lot of people relisting. But what it means to me is at least people are going back on the active market. So that's the first half of the equation, right? Because in a frozen market, nobody wants to sell or buy, right? So at least we're saying this is an inventory. It's going to be about a week and a half to see if we see absorption. If we see absorption of this inventory, for better or for worse, the market is back on and it's back to its normal market. And I say for better or for worse because if you're selling, great, somebody's got to buy your place. But if you are buying, and traditionally as investors we're not interested in acquisition, it's going to be tough for you. We are starting to see the return of bidding wars. There's been a couple in the last few days, and that's not great for us, right? As investors, we have numbers we're trying to work against. So obviously, not the best news. Now, in a week and a half, we don't see absorption of the inventory. I think that's a lot more interesting. Because if we don't see absorption of the inventory, we see a bunch of inventory coming on, nobody's buying it, that will push market prices down. Remember, these folks, it might be their second time, third time coming to market. They, for the most part, are only entering this market if they need to sell. Right? We know there's already been a bit of a decline in prices. So why would you enter a tough market? You're entering a tough market because you need to sell your product. So how do you make that happen? You drop the price. Right? So we'll see. I think the next week and a half will be really interesting. And the next time that we meet here as a group, I think we'll have lots to talk about.
So I want to define absorption rates. What is absorption?
Yeah. So absorption rate in particular, we're looking at a metric called the sales to new listing ratio. It's a metric that's published by MLS, so you can look at it yourself. A healthy market is a 0.6 absorption rate. So about 60% of the inventory that's absorbed. That's just a balanced market. And if you look historically, Toronto is never balanced. We are either way on the other side where people are absorbing higher than 60%, or last couple of months way below, close to 40% absorption. Any questions about that? Yeah. So I couldn't hear 100% of it, but I heard the bidding wars that I've seen, have they been selling way over market too? Is that what you're wondering? Yes. Okay. So that's a very important detail, right? The bidding wars that we're seeing are not because prices are way below market, right? So it's not like it's a $1.5 million home that's being listed for $999,000. That's not the case. we're seeing bidding wars on properties that are good inventory, so they're nice houses, and they're listed properly, right? So, you know, if it's a $1.2 million house for bidding war, you know, we're listing it at like $999 or something like that, right? But that's kind of normal for bidding war strategy. So it is that kind of property. So normal bidding war stuff.
I just thought I'd add, it's also a very attractive purchase. In other words, it's a renovated property. You renovate it, I've all the money to check it by year. And that's causing multiple offers. I believe.
Oh, so
I noticed that trend.
renovated properties, yeah. Yeah, and so the point was like renovated, nicely presented properties are the ones getting bidding wars, especially in this market environment. You know, we do a lot of construction to the chagrin, I think, of the team. It is a difficult, expensive process. Construction has not come down in price since the pandemic. It is still very expensive. Some materials have come down in price, but most are still way elevated from just a couple of years ago. So homes where you don't have to go through that process are absolutely going at a premium. Because one, you don't have to deal with the cost and hassle of renovation right now. And two, you don't have to deal with the timelines that are associated with it. So are people paying a premium? Yeah, absolutely.
My next question is, do you have access to any other properties that maybe will work and the price value will be less because people don't want to buy them?
Yes. So, I mean, we have access to both. So, you know, one of the ones we showed up at the top is an infill development, right? And, sorry? Infill is you tear it down and you build a giant home. So I'm sure you've seen them all throughout the city. People buy these old homes, they tear them down, they build a new house on top of it. In a typical market, that would have gone really quickly because acquisition, you know, mid ones, build on it because you can build a pretty big home, about $1 million, right? Or less if you're in the industry, or you're hiring somebody about $1 million. Finished properties in the neighborhood go for a $3 million price range. So there's money there. But are people pulling the trigger on something like that right now? No. Because remember, developers have to carry the cost of higher interest as well. They're smart. They're not pulling in all their money to do this. They're borrowing money. They're either borrowing it from individuals, private lenders, or they're borrowing it from banks to make this example. They're trying to reduce their exposure, but they're hit by interest rates. So sellers have to give a discount to make things now more attractive to developers. Yes, that's one example. But you know, even like a rundown single family home in the city, they have not been selling as well. You know, I may be eating my words in a couple of days, but right now they're not selling as well. Any other questions about the market, where things are right now? Anything you want to know?
So things have been very frozen in the market. Very, very frozen. Meaning that product isn't trading hands. Properties are not trading hands. We were seeing, I haven't looked up this statistic recently, but I know that on average year over year, there was 40% less sales volumes, meaning 40% less transactions, meaning 40% less buyers bought properties. That is a huge pent-up demand. And so this is why Ming and I were discussing sort of our outlook for Q4. We don't think this market is going to stay frozen. There's just too much pent-up demand. That pent-up demand on the buyer side and sellers possibly needing to unload their inventory. Transactions need to start happening again, and this is where we see the floodgates happening, the floodgates opening. And where we don't have a prediction is what Ming was talking about, with regards to inventory and absorption rates is whether things are going to take off this way or things are going to take off this way.
They're gonna move.
It's gonna move because it can't stay in this pent up demand frozen state in perpetuity. It cannot, right? Yes.
But we do know that we're not on pace to meet the, what is it? 20 million, I don't know, some ridiculous amount of properties that is shortfall.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
We're way off.
The question was,
So the long-term picture looks really good in terms of positioning ourselves.
Absolutely. So like, you know, if I have an angel and a devil on my shoulder, the optimist is like, that's the other side. You know, the optimist in me is like, we are still, the city is still growing at a phenomenal rate. We're still way underdeveloped. All this, you know, stuff in the media around greenbelt development, it doesn't matter. We're still like way under what we need in terms of properties. So, do I believe that there's, and I see with my own eyes some of the demand. I take clients out for showings. There's lineups at some of these places because there's so many showings happening. So part of me is like, oh, there's definitely could be upward movement. At the same time, I'm like, U.S. economy is on the verge of recession. The Chinese economy is pretty much there, and that will have a major global impact. We had, you know, the inflationary numbers of the U.S. weren't better, yet it still went up a little bit, but it still went up. So like, you know, me and Matt were sitting here, we're like, what does our crystal ball tell us? And you know, it's not a great prediction. It's going to go up or down, guys. There you go. It's going to do both. I think the big thing is it's not going to stay frozen, right? Like we know there's going to be movement. There has to be movement now because of what we're seeing. But it is really hard to say is it going to drive the market upwards or downwards. It's going to drive it one way, and it's going to drive it quickly, whichever one happens.
I did look up and there's 22 million units shortfall by 2030.
Yeah, that was the CMHC report, right?
Just around
Yes.
the corner.
We talked about it 5 months ago when it came out. Because I remember when that came out. It's funny because we were actually talking to CMHC a year and a half ago about the missing middle problem. I don't know how they found us, but we sat and talked with them for a couple of hours, and we're like, we need to just build more, and you guys need to make it easier. And then, you know, a year later they came up with this report, and I'm like, vindication. Like, what else am I going to do?
I just thought I'd share a different perspective on the idea of like activities from the mortgage perspective. Because you guys commented that there just isn't enough inventory and there's some pent-up demand. We see a bit of a different perspective because we're interacting with people at the earlier stages where they haven't probably been spoken to you and perhaps are not obviously making offers, but they want to know what they qualify for. And I would say that as a national team, we've got about 70 agents literally across the country. You know, we're seeing an uptick in what we call pre-positioning. So individuals that are looking to get mortgage applications. Again, these are people that are even at your level where they're ready to go out. So we see an uptick in demand, particularly in the GTA and in Toronto. So again, if I was looking at a crystal ball, there's certainly a lot of demand there. I think the challenge is they're just not seeing enough listings. And there's a bit of fatigue where we've had clients just fall off and say, like, I'm not finding anything, I'm leaving. So, but there certainly is demand even on our side, and that sort of trickles down to your end. So ideally, if the listings start to pick up, I think that we'll see a lot more activity. And I do think there's a small window from now until the spring, this is my bet, that if you're able to secure something now, if once the rates eventually and ultimately come down, pricing will have to go up. Because there certainly is demand, there's a massive gap in housing. I think the annual amount in like Toronto is like 200 grand, maybe I'm wrong, but something like that of a shortfall. So supply and demand, right? So there's a bit of a short window that I would say if you can find something and you've done the math and it makes sense, even if it doesn't make sense, if you can ride it out for a year or two, this is the window to take advantage of it.
That's a good point. So, for example, like my feeling is that the market is going to stabilize, but like this is a hunch. I have no data to back this up, no stats to back this up. But just from what we're seeing, there's a lot of people who want to buy places and they've just been on the sidelines for so long, right? So a lot of you, funny enough, I skipped through my entire damn presentation, but I had a few anecdotes there about. I was going to talk about a couple of clients of ours, Tommy and Gina, and Tommy was sitting on the sidelines. He was waiting, and here, let me see if I can find this slide. This is Tommy, right? Deer in headlights, and he's like, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to do nothing. And I'm going to stand right here and get hit by this dump truck. Right? And Tommy missed his opportunity, right? And this is not an unusual story. You could probably look in the mirror and find someone who also missed an opportunity, right? And I contrast this with a different client, Gina. And Gina, she must have been doing yoga or something. Calm, clear-headed, clear mind, and she approached it methodically. And when shit was really hitting the fan, there was a lot of blood in the streets, and there was lots of time to be. That was the time to be fearful. She took action, and she accidentally bought right at the bottom. Actually, because if you recall, if we take you through a history lesson, 2021 things were on the rise. Sorry, this is backwards because I'm facing you. But on the rise, beginning of 2022, things still on the rise. Then small interest rate hike, things slowed down. Small interest rate hike, things slowed down a little more. Supersized hike, things started tanking, right? It crested, it peaked, started coming down. Supersized hike came down. Supersized hike came down, right? You know that story. So in the midst of all that crap that was going on, we had a client, and Gina was like, all good. And Gina managed to find something that was $150,000 to $200,000 under market value. Basically, we could demonstrate what market value would have been and should have been 6 months prior, based upon cash flow, cap rates. There's lots of analysis we could do to ascertain rents hadn't changed. In fact, rents were still on uptick at that time, remember? Right? Rents were still on uptick. So she was like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense now. Great. So she pulled the trigger, and now she's laughing, right? She timed it by accident. Right?
And the thing is, now Gina wants to buy another one, but this deal doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, so we have to reset those damn expectations. But we talk about Tommy and Gina a lot, but we got another client. His name's John Giovanni, right? So what did John do? So John bought at the peak. He bought at the end of 2021, not quite full peak, but like end of 2021, he bought. And his property value, by all accounts, dropped by about $150,000 toward the middle of 2022, right? By all accounts, most of us would be shitting ourselves. We'd be like, oh damn, oh you know, whatever, and we'd be crying over our spilt milk. The reality is, John also, like, he was awesome before, and he's still awesome. Because he just rode the thing out, he bought it, he did some renos, got some positive cash flow, even upon increased rates, didn't hurt him too bad, still more neutral cash flow, all good, just rode it out. And now, and then end of 2022 into 2023, what happened? Rates stabilized, good old Tiff Macklin got in there and stabilized rates, right? And then property prices recovered again. And then, you know, the rest of 2023 happened, raised rates again and all that stuff. Point being, and I got many other slides to substantiate this and prove this, which I'm not going to get into now because apparently I've got to save it for another month. But you'll see, everyone will look at that and go, oh my god, that was a terrible situation. Yeah, no doubt, it sucks. It sucked to have bought close to the peak and quote unquote lost 150 grand. But he didn't lose 150 grand. He still had a good asset. And the asset valuation will fluctuate, it'll go up, it'll go down. But over the long term, and that's the crux of a couple of these slides I have here, over the long term, this is just a clip. It makes almost no freaking difference. Right? I know it's a very brash thing to say, over a $150,000 loss, but it wasn't a real loss. Right? So that was the crux of the whole presentation, by the way.
I think you as well. I bought a property in March 2017, right at a market peak, right? And probably, you know, between March and June, it dropped like 400,000 in value. Up now, right? It takes time, right? You have to be able to ride it. It's in a primo location. It's 2-minute, 3-minute walk from the subway. Like, I'll hopefully never sell that asset, right? And it was a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to get in. Do I wish I paid $400,000 less? Absolutely. But I might never have had that opportunity if I had waited for a couple months, because the market could have been frozen again. Anyway.
I don't know. What else do you want to get into? What?
Yeah. So we've got a couple minutes. If there's nothing else, maybe we can end it. We can have individual conversations with people if they want to talk to us.
I'm trying to see if there's anything else.
Oh yes. If you got something tonight, please pay your. Yes, please play your server. Yes. Great, thank you very much. Yes. Hugo does everything.
Yeah, and so commercial is the perfect sort of solution. So in a situation where there are no financing solutions for you on the traditional residential side, we normally talk about here, and you want to buy real estate, you can get into a 5-unit property or greater. That's usually kind of a nice little segue into it. And at 5 units, it's now considered a commercial property, and we're looking at the financials of the building. So if the building has very attractive financials and it can cover itself, your loan primarily will be dictated by what the financials look like. The credit bureau, the net worth, and your experience and so on have a bit of an impact on maybe rates and how much we can stretch that, but for the most part, you can be zero income earner and get the best possible mortgage because the property is solid. It would seem now stretching your amortizations as much as it in 50 years in some cases. There's some pretty interesting stuff there. So yeah, commercial for some people is the way to go.
And we have 2 commercial deals right now. We do. They're both off market. Both sellers don't want to bring it to the public market. And this is actually, the bigger you get, the less people want to publicize it. They don't want their tenants to know that the property's going to be sale. They don't want it's going to go to markets, right? So we have both a 5-plex and 8-plex off market. Both in Toronto.
Sorry?
5 and 8. Yes, 5 and 8. Last thing I would want to leave you with is this. So, what do we do in today's environment? So, if you're a buyer, carpe diem. Carpe diem. Seize the day. Because what happened to Tommy, don't let that happen to you. Don't get run over by that dump truck, right? This is what happened during the environment, previous interest rate hikes and stuff. Like interest rate hikes, essentially when I say, prices, the market slowed, what it essentially means is buyers went to the sidelines. Buyers went to the sidelines. So for a long time, can you imagine buying in Toronto with no multiple offer situation, no competition, being able to put conditions into your offers again? That never happened in the past. Yeah, extending conditions. Remember you got a $90,000 abatement? That's a different story. That's a different story. We got a $90,000 abatement for a client. $1.5 million, long story short, $1.5 million purchase, $300,000 down payment, yada, 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 seller, some stuff happened. We, in the midst of all this, we asked for a $90,000 abatement. We did not ask for a price reduction. Normal real estate agent would go, oh, can I get a price reduction? We, more astutely, said we want an abatement, which is an adjustment on the statement of adjustments at the time of closing on the with the lawyers. The difference, that $300,000 down payment became a $210,000 down payment. No.
Existing triplex.
Existing triplex.
Yes, I'll pat ourselves a bit on the back there. The $90,000
Wait, I negotiated that.
Yeah, he negotiated it. But the only reason we even got to that point is because when we buy homes, we have a lot of protective language in there that go above and beyond what you see in a typical agreement of purchase and sale. Like, I sit on both sides. A lot of times I get an offer, and there's like 4 or 5 clauses in there protecting the client. We have 4 or 5 pages of clauses protecting our client. And one of those pages, and one of those clauses, or one of those lines is what costs $90,000, right? Because we said we were looking for no open work orders, and then we instructed the lawyer to do a work order search, and he found open work orders. So then that's how we were able to get that in there. So, you know, this might not have happened if somebody didn't have that language in their themselves.
And
yeah, similar. And it happened to be in the right market conditions. The right market conditions. Otherwise, we can posture as much as it means it was a buyer's market at that point in time, right? So this is what I'm saying. Carpe diem. We'll seize the day. We'll put some offers out tomorrow. The reason being is because during that time there was a buyer's market. It was not a seller's market. That seller felt like they had no other options. So we postured like we weren't going to close. Hey, you're in breach of contract. We postured like we weren't going to close. They were shitting themselves. So they were like, okay, what do you want? What do you want? So I put together this entire list of what it would cost to rectify, and like if we close, this is what it's going to cost. I inflated those numbers significantly. It should have been probably $20,000, $30,000, again, $90,000. Yeah, not bad. Okay, and the point being, what's that? Labor costs, sweat equity, distress. Take advantage of this opportunity if you're a buyer. Okay? Don't just sit on the sidelines and hope that, you know, whatever, so things are going to come down even further or whatever. Like, even if they do, it's not the end of the world. Just find a good, solid property that you can operate and hold over the long term, and that time is the biggest determinant of success. Time. If you're able to hold over the long term, your odds of success go through the roof, right? So that's on the buyer side. On the seller side, live to fight another day. Live to fight another day. So if you're into a situation where your portfolio is negative, massively negative cash flow, you've got several properties, maybe you're one of those guys that got duped into buying a bunch of pre-construction condos, and you own 4 or 5 of them, and they're all cash flow negative by $1,000, $1,500 right now. Not atypical. I talk to almost on a daily basis. I have advisory sessions with people in these situations. Live to fight another day. And what I mean by that is it's okay to sell a property or two. Right? Prune your portfolio, rebalance, reoptimize. Because what's going to happen is upon the sale, you free up equity, use that equity, pay off some debt, and that allows you to reduce your holding costs, your financing costs, and that will significantly reduce your negative cash flow. Maybe you can get a neutral cash flow, who knows. And that's okay, right? And that doesn't mean that you can't re-enter the market later again when the situation, circumstances, your own circumstances are a little different. But at least it means for now, we need to go on with it.
One thing I'd add to that is if you're on the pessimist side of things, and you believe we're at the cusp of a downward movement in the market, and you're on the selling side, you want first mover advantage. Okay? So if you think the market's going to go down, it is better to be the first person to set a new low in your area than it is to chase the market down. I hate having these conversations where, 3 months in, and the seller wants to just come down a little bit at a time. And we're never down enough ahead of where the market's going. And instead of losing $50,000 in the beginning and cutting it early, selling the place, it's like death by 1,000 cuts, 20,000, 20,000, 20,000, now $100,000 and it's been 3 or 4 months. So, and it happens a lot. You look at listing history, you'll see that's what a lot of people do. So, if you are of the belief that we're entering the market, we're going to sell in a couple of weeks, and it's going down, be aggressive.
All right, so it's 9:30, and Ming, you gotta go. All right, so I guess the quarter's over.